Hi, and welcome to our monthly grant rating in the age of AI discussion. I am one of the co-hosts, Melody Hernandez. I have a grant consulting firm in San Francisco where it is currently way too hot and in a city not equipped for the heat. Yeah, I generally work with folks who are not using AI, are reluctant to use AI, are learning how to use AI, and are often overwhelmed by the process. I also am very concerned about the ethics of AI in a lot of different ways. And so Fielding and I decided to hold this space so that we're having these discussions that are, um, making sure that we are keeping these things on in the front of everyone's mind. So go ahead, Fielding.
Hi, I'm Fielding Jezreel, the other co-host, and I started using AI in early 2025 when some pretty significant changes first rolled out by ChatGPT made it seem likely to me that we as grant professionals would need to learn how to use it. And at this point, any of the AI tools that are commonly used can do what ChatGPT could do then. Um, and given recent headlines, there are good reasons to move away from ChatGPT, increasing ethical concerns. And so we can talk a little bit about that today, but we also today wanted to do something a little bit different. And Melody's going to walk us through how to, you know, wrangle AI to really make it sound like you. So one of the biggest challenges um I hear from grant writers is like there's too many M dashes, it doesn't sound like me. I can't figure out how to control it. And so we thought that might be a fun topic for today. So today might be a little bit more like show and tell from our side than normal. But we, as always, welcome conversation, questions, and really whatever is on your mind is, we can go there. So thanks for joining.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, so first I'd like to just open the floor to, if anyone came with anything that they want to talk about. We are kind of focusing this on using voice in your AI or how to make it sound more like you. So if you have specific things that you want to share, we can start with that before we kind of dive into a little bit of an example of how to get started with it.
I have asked ChatGPT to test the stuff that it produces for me to screen it for AI red flags. And so it that's been helpful for me just to have it check its own work and then modify it to make it not sound like AI. Um, I've used Marbleism some for social media marketing, and it replaces all M dashes with colons, an overabundance of colons, like a spring garden of colons flowering everywhere. It's like insane. So that's a real thing. Like it completely needs to be reined in. But ChatGPT, I have found to be able to kind of check itself for that. So I don't know if the other tools also do that as well. And I would be really interested in hearing. I have not kept up with current headlines on reasons to steer away from chat. So I would be very interested in hearing about that since that's the one service that I offer is custom GPT. So if I need to switch to another platform, let me know.
Yeah, I can weigh in on that just quickly. So, the Department of Defense had a contract with Claude and were pushing the boundaries and asked them to, I believe, re-sign a contract. I may be getting some of these details incorrect, but basically they were amending the contract or changing the way that they were using it, and or Claude realized it was being used a certain way. But basically, Department of Defense is verging on using AI in potentially autonomous ways with weapons. And There was a lot of discussion publicly about the fact that uh, generally the people creating AI do not believe that is a good idea. They do not want to be anywhere near that.
Hmm.
And the current administration decided to basically say to Claude, you have to sign it, or we're going to cut our contract with you. Huge contract. And Claude walked away, and ChatGPT jumped in, or OpenAI jumped in, and they're like, we'll do it. And so it was a little bit unclear ultimately what the final contract like really says. But I think a lot of people are like, OpenAI is not really listening to the programmers who are like, this should not be happening. Like this,
Don't do
AI
it.
is not
Yeah.
ready for this, and it is unethical to have AI being making decisions about, I don't know, bombs. And so uh there have been reports of several employees of, these AI companies like walking away from their mega contracts because they just don't want to be involved in that. So,
Yes, and I think um it is there are a lot of ethical concerns around AI. There are a lot of ethical concerns with the way that specific companies um AI companies are, who they're engaging with, who they're, what they're doing, where they think the ethical boundaries are. And I do think that's something to stay um, on the forefront of, right? And really kind of use our collective voices to, say this is like, we affirm that this is where ethical boundaries should be because the I think a lot of folks are struggling to keep up. This technology is evolving very quickly, and a lot of folks are struggling to keep up with the ethical side of the conversations in different sectors and things. And especially when we're talking about um, you know, different political forces that are also pushing the boundaries at the same time that technology is pushing the boundaries is a very um yeah, there's a lot of concerns that I have, and I
yep.
will be using ChatGPT for this demonstration, which is a bit unfortunate to be, kind of using their product at a time when, um, they're not really kind of embodying the ethics that we would like to see within the field. I stayed away. Delayed kind of really delving into using AI um, quite a bit, primarily due to a lot of the ethical concerns that I have with the people who are in the positions of power to be making these kind of decisions about when and how AI is being used. It is a very myopic view of the world that is being used to make these decisions that have huge ramifications. And there's not a lot of discussion around it. It's just push, 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 push the boundaries. It's all this tech, you know, push the boundaries and be damned of the consequences approach to it. Um, and not stopping to think just because we can, does that mean we should, right? And also being driven by capitalism at its core and having to constantly show their investors a profit. And that is very hard to do without compromising ethics in our current, you know, economic structure. Whew. Now I'm like, okay, can I quickly transition this over to Claude?
So, and here's the other thing that I'll say. And Melody, if you want to present in ChatGPT, I can like build a dummy system or like mirror it in any of them because
Yeah.
the tools are all essentially the same. But I would also say like while I appreciate Claude like holding the line, Claude for a long time has attempted to appear like the ethical option. And there is very, very little difference between these
Yeah.
companies. So, like, while I appreciate them holding that line, I'm not like everybody run to Claude. Like, I'm really, and I actually think, and I have felt this way from the beginning. So a lot of people say Claude's the best writer. I like Claude the best for writing. And I have stayed with ChatGPT because I feel like it is more controllable. Like the tools that I have to control it are better. Nothing I write in ChatGPT has M dashes. So, that's because I figured out how to control it. And I can't honestly say the same thing in Claude. And I would, if I were to say, like, if you're not using a tool today and you're just starting out, I think Perplexity is the way to go. So, but again, these things are going to leapfrog one another
Mhm.
again and again and again, and they're going to make bad decisions because they are ultimately companies driven by revenue models. They don't really care about us as humans, and they don't really care about lots of things. So, not to say that Claude shouldn't have done what they did, and not to say that ChatGPT isn't responsible for making terrible decisions, but I just don't think that there is any single one AI tool right now where you can be like, this is the ethical decision, and now I don't have to worry about everything else that's going on. So I,
Yeah. And so, yeah, and I do think that is part of it. And I think that, there's also a lot of environmental concerns, and I don't know that there's any, I'm not aware of, and I've tried to find any that are less, environmentally destructive. And
there is an AI built in Sweden or
Switzerland,
Norway.
Switzerland, but I didn't think it was up and running yet. Is it up and running now? Last I saw it wasn't ready
It's going to
for,
run totally on wind power.
yeah. Last I saw it was future tense though. So I don't know, and it's been, again, this all moves quickly. I think it was 2 months ago I looked, and it was future tense language.
Okay.
So I don't
Okay.
know that it's up and running yet, but maybe
Okay.
it is. But it was, yeah. I'm still kind of waiting for that. Give me an AI, and I think that one was also trying to be maybe a little more ethical in their, other decision-making processes, right?
Yep.
But we'll see. We'll see. Okay. So, again, this is a discussion. This is not, you didn't sign up for a class, and Fielding offers a lot of really great actual and expert leading the discussion, and or leading the the curriculum, right? This is, hey, I have never done this before. Let me try figure out how to do this. And thank goodness we have Fielding in the room to say, Melody, do it better. Okay, so we have here um, what I want to do is I want to create a GPT that will be in the tone of me, right? And so I'm actually going to ask ChatGPT to give me the instructions for that GPT. So I don't have to sit there and try to figure it out, right? And it is now going to tell me exactly what I have to put into that GPT in order to train it appropriately, right? And it's going to think for a minute. And of course it does this way longer than okay. So here is what we want to do. It's going to give me all these different here's the instructions to paste into the custom GPT. All right. And it's telling me everything that I need to tell it to to do. Now, one thing I'm also noticing in here that I do like to um yeah, like I like this. Give me a placeholder. Don't make up stuff. Don't act like you have the answer. Give me a placeholder, right? But one thing I do like to have say here, which I'm not seeing it say yet, is kind of like, give it a 12th grade reading level or something, because sometimes they kind of default to, I don't know if it's like a fourth grade reading level or something, but right? So here is all this stuff, and I'm going to go ahead when it's done. Holy cow, this is giving me a lot. A lot. Okay, so, oh my goodness, I didn't know it was going to give me all this. Do, 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 do. Okay, optional short version for the Chat GPT builder. Yeah, you should have just given me that. I probably would have want to. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a GPT here and put in the instructions here. I'm going to call it Melody's Grant Write Writing Assistant. Okay. All right. And then I'm going to go ahead and create that. Oh, and then I'm going to upload my examples. Sorry, I should have had those more ready. Um, and let's see here. Okay, hold on. Do, do, do. Here we go. Okay, grab these, open, and then also upload this one.
Melody, while you're getting this all queued up, could
Okay.
I follow up with a comment in the chat?
Yep.
So, Aaron, when you say training AI on knowledge docs is always what takes the most time, what do you mean by that?
So, I mean, the way that I have my ChatGPT set up is that for each of my clients, I have a particular project set up so that I can have threads that relate to each of those clients and, pulling in their institutional language, their organizational history, and their strategic plan, and like all of these things that I need to train GPT on the client so that it knows the client's voice and the information and that sort of thing. Like just taking that time to do that and making sure that I have all of that information in one place so that ChatGPT has the full context for that client. When I say it takes time, it's mostly just me taking time away from working on a distinct application to actually train it so that it is smarter in the future. And some clients have done a really good job uh, setting that up and getting it running, and then others are just taking more time. So
Yep.
that's what I mean.
And so when you say train it, you're just referring to moving documents into the knowledge base.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And then also like setting up sort of what Melody is doing right now, setting up what I want it to do, what I want it not to do within, because maybe that client does use the Oxford comma, maybe they don't, like little things like that, that yes, I
Yep.
could correct it within a thread, but it would make more sense to set it up one way to start.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead,
And
Melody.
I was just gonna say, and this is an example of garbage in, garbage out, and that is such a huge concept within the grant development sector. Yes, if you're giving it, you should take more time to give it better a better knowledge base, which I'm not necessarily doing here as much as you could, because I wanted to show kind of how you could quickly start with this, but that is something to spend more time on, in my opinion, and I'm sure Fielding has additional information about that as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. And as I do something very similar for clients, building out projects, um, I use two documents every single time. So number one, my instructions are always the same. First, I want the project to know how to write a grant. That is the most important piece of the puzzle. Secondarily, I build a voice print for each client, and that goes into their knowledge base. So the voice print, so in a separate thread, not in the project, I'm training I'm essentially asking AI to create a training document for me that identifies the way that the client writes about itself, right? So whoever's doing that writing before I got there, could be me, whatever. But I'm I'm creating a piece of like an asset, right? That's going to go into the knowledge base that provides all that detail. Like we use the Oxford comma, but also things like when we talk about people with disabilities, we say people with disabilities and not disabled people, right? Or like all the language nuances. In addition to things like, does this client already use M dashes or do they not? Right? It's gonna like pick up on that. Um, and then I think a lot of organizational leaders. So I would say this really applies for those grant writers who feel like they're being micromanaged by an executive director. sometimes executive directors or the development director whoever is reviewing the work before it goes in has really strong opinions about
Yeah.
writing. And the great thing is that if they are consistent in their feedback, AI can figure out why and what's happening for you and then create some rules so that you're not getting back these red line grants over and over and over. Now, of course, if that person is not consistent, it's not going to work very well and it's just going to be infuriating forever. But AI is really good at identifying those trends. So you can upload, like, hey, here's the first version, here's the version reflecting all the changes. And you could do that 4 or 5 times. Say these are paired, these are paired, these are paired. Identify the common themes and the things that, are going to need to be changed in every grant. So I think that's one of the, I those two things I think together, in addition to all the assets that I would include from a client, which are just the things that we would look for in a as grant professionals, right, to reference. I always create that point of view document because it has just it as I build these out for clients. So I also build custom AI, grant projects for clients, and consistently one of the main pieces of feedback is like it just doesn't sound exactly like us. So then we just create that thing every
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. So this is a different, Chat GPT that I'm not logged into here that is giving a very generic answer to this. And this is a question that came from a grant review panel I was on where I got a lot of answers like this, where it was just, you're not really saying a lot specific. This is a very generic answer, and it is very obviously written by AI, right? So now we're going to take the same question and we're going to see how this new Chat GPT just even visually makes it a little different and a little, hopefully, in theory, um a little more like, I don't know how it did that. A little more like how I write as a grant writer. So we'll see. Okay. So I think even visually we can see, obviously it does have the specifics about the client. But this is, I think, a way that if we were to read this, it definitely, I mean, already, just even from that short little, what did I spend 10 minutes there? Um, and only gave it three documents to choose off of, or to for its knowledge base. It's already sounding more like it's written by a person. So then to Fielding's point, we would look through this and we would decide, yes, it is using M dashes. Guess what? I gave it writing samples that existed before GPT. I intentionally did that. Before AI, was like a thing. There were 15-year-old writing samples, right? And I used M dashes, right? So it is keeping that consistent with that, right? Um, and it does tell me like what is missing from the response to strengthen it, which I think is important. I very much am training my AI to not be a sycophant, not to tell me what a great and wonderful writer I am. Just like when I ask one of my staff or one of my, colleagues to, hey, read this and this grant proposal before you submit it and make it better, right? I don't want you to tell me what a great writer I am. I want you to help be more critical in it, right? So that's also something to kind of train your AI on. Always tell me how I could be doing better, right? But what do we think? Does this sound a little bit more, little less like AI if you were to read this? Outdoor Education Nonprofit will assess the impact of this grant on advancing equity by tracking both who we serve and what changes as a result of their participation. We begin with equitable access. We will collect demographic information at intake to understand who is participating in the internship program, including indicators such as race, ethnicity, income background, and prior access to outdoor education opportunities. This allows us to confirm that the program is reaching young adults from communities that have been historically excluded from outdoor recreation and career pathways in the field. Does that sound like AI to folks?
No, but
Yeah.
I will say the next paragraph to me would be an indicator that it is AI because it is putting in information that is not relevant to the question being asked. So the very next paragraph, when we measure participant progress through the program, key indicators include that is not being asked for in this question. And so this is where I think AI can still get people into trouble.
Hmm.
And this came up with someone on a call yesterday I had who I was coaching, and she was like, every answer included this weird data point. So to your point, Melody, you only gave it 3 documents to
Yeah.
work from. And sometimes when you give it too little information, it over pulls because it wants to give you a lot of information, but it's not necessarily going to be relevant like precisely to the prompt.
Hmm.
Right. So if really this question, and I'm forgetting it exactly, but I think it was on
Oh,
like
sorry.
equity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How you're evaluating the impact of the grant
So
for
that
advancing
next
equity.
paragraph had absolutely nothing to
Yeah.
do with advancing equity or measuring the advancement in equity.
Hmm.
Right. And so I think so it's picking up on the evaluation part of that question, but it has failed to link it to equity. And so either that paragraph's got to go, or the human has to identify that has happened,
Yeah.
and we need to come back in and say we disaggregate this data by race and whatever, right? To assess whether people are advancing at equitable rates through the program.
Yeah, so to Fielding's point, how can I link this to equity and then cut and pasted that paragraph. And then they gave 2 examples of um how to do that. And it might be that there is some missing data there, right?
Mhm.
So some missing information that would be better approached. But again, I mean, this was not necessarily to give the best grant answer. It was to
Yeah,
make
yeah.
it not sound so much like AI, right? And I do think that, I mean, I feel like this sounds less like AI.
Oh,
And
100%.
and
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. It's specific, right? I mean, I think the
yeah.
number one issue with AI, when we don't feed it information that is specific to the program, it's not going to give a specific output. And so if I ask AI to write a grant about adult education, it sure will do it, but it's not going to be specific to any organization, any geographic area, any population, right? It's going to be completely generic. And that is the challenge that you ran into, Melody, as a reviewer, right? People just
Yeah.
dropped in the prompt into ChatGPT and got the exact same generic answer out, and were like, yeah, this could apply to our organization, and put it in there without actually bringing anything specific from their organization to the prompt.
Hmm. But I do have to say, and I didn't do this, but I probably should have, would be to, create that GPT, but without the explicit instructions to use my voice, because I have seen that too, where it's specific information, but it is still presented with the, AI voice, right? So by writing in a process that you're doing anyways of giving it the knowledge base and then very explicitly saying use this tone, right, use this, and one thing I didn't mention is one of the documents I uploaded wasn't even a grant. It was, this is Melody's tone from my blog articles, actually, right? But much more like less of, just focused on the information, and also explicitly telling the GPT to use the tone. And I do see we are at time, but I do want to quickly answer this next question. What are some of the ways that grant reviewers are using AI? And I mean, I think that that is running the gamut these days. We have grant reviewers that are using AI to screen, to maybe narrow down the number of applications that they want to actually sit down and use human effort to use. There are some grant reviewers that are saying you cannot use AI. I was just on a grant review panel that we were all expected to read every word and score every word and not use AI at any step in the process. So it kind of really does run the gamut. And then one thing I've noticed, if they're like, this is an open RFP, anyone can apply, and we're going to tell you in 6 weeks whether or not you got the grant, no human being is involved in that decision making process, because if you've ever been on a grant review panel, you need a lot more than 6 weeks to read the hundreds, maybe even thousands, to just organize them and assign them to people, right? So that can be an indicator that it is completely using AI they're just feeding it all in and saying, tell us who to give the money to, right? Which One of my clients did win the OpenAI grant that we completely used ChatGPT to write that proposal. And guess what? OpenAI was like, that's a winner. All right. Yes, this definitely could go on. I also do want to mention that Fielding does have additional um, AI focused, resources and trainings, and both of us offer coaching on this front. Mine is maybe a little bit more at a level of you're really struggling with just the basics. Fielding is ready to kind of take you to the next level. But yeah, thank you everyone for coming. And hopefully that was helpful in finding your voice in AI. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, y'all.